Today we return to Nepal to trek the other majestic mountain region known as Annapurna, which many people consider to be even more beautiful than the Everest region. But this trek is not nearly as hard or difficult as that Everest Base Camp Trek that I did last fall, so it's much less taxing physically and open to many more people to be able to do so. I caught just a glimpse of it on my visit to the gateway city of Pokhara and have decided that I want to return to do this trek in a couple of years, so please let me know if you want to join me. I can't wait to share what makes this Nepalese adventure so alluring, so let's get started. Welcome to the Active Travel Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks. One of the best ways to learn about new podcasts is from other podcasts. So I want to give you a 30-second intro to another podcast I thought you might enjoy.
Hey, Active Travel Adventure fans. Kit sent us. I'm Mike Putman.
And I'm James Ferrara from No Tourists Allowed podcast. We're two travel industry veterans with over 70 years on the inside between us. Every week, we share the stuff you're not supposed to know. The apps that replace tour guides, the tricks to booking business class on points, and the insider intel on the hottest new resorts and cruise ships before the crowds find them.
If you love exploring the world, we'll help you do it smarter, cheaper, and way more like a local.
Search No Tourists Allowed wherever you're listening right now.
Today we return to the mystical and colorful Nepal, which is sandwiched between China and India, the country that my most traveled friends return to time and time again, as our guest Bronwyn does. Bron's going to be telling us about Nepal in general and the Annapurna Sanctuary Trek, which is also known as Annapurna Base Camp, or ABC for short. She treks with my new friends and adventure tour operator, Basanta Adventures, who are Nepalese folks based in the capital city of Nepal, Kathmandu. Basanta Adventures has been offering adventure tours in Nepal, Tibet, and Bhutan for over 30 years and can help you tailor the adventure of your dreams. As one of my affiliates, they also offer my listeners a discount, so be sure to email me at kit@activetraveladventures.com for the current promo code. Not only will you save a little bit, but you'll also be helping to support this program at no additional cost to you, and very importantly, helping to keep this program ad-free, which everybody really appreciates. In fact, I'm going to be putting together 3 tours in a row in 2028, starting first with doing this Annapurna Trek that we're going to be talking about today, along with other explorations in Nepal. Then we're going to head over to Tibet. Basant's mother is from Tibet, and so he knows that country and the people, and he's one of the few licensed to go there for more of a cultural exploration we're going to be doing there. And then we're going to head back to Bhutan, but instead of doing what most tourists do, we're going to be going to a different region that tourists don't really know anything about, and we're going to be exploring a completely different section of Bhutan. And you can either participate in 1, 2, or all 3 of these tours, and we'll have an add-on to do some of the iconic sites in Bhutan that folks did with me last year. And so if you went with me then, you can come on this. It's going to be a completely different trip. It won't be repetition of some of the things that you've already seen. And that one's probably going to be a level 2 to a 3 adventure-wise. And Tibet, of course, is more cultural, so that's going to be very low level. And the Nepal we'll see is at 3 to a 4 depending, and I would give it a 4 just because of the altitude. You'll feel it, but with the Diamox you should be fine. So enough about that. Let's now head over to Annapurna and Nepal. I've asked Bron to come on the program today to tell us about one of her many to Nepal. And on this one, we're going to be talking specifically about going to Annapurna Sanctuary, Annapurna Base Camp. Welcome to the program, Bron. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much.
So I understand from Basanta Adventures, one of my new affiliates out of Nepal. He does Nepal, Tibet, and Bhutan. I'll have information in the show links on that. That you and Basant go way back, and you and Basanta Adventures go way back. So are you a regular visitor to Nepal, or just kind of give us an overview of who we're talking to today?
Yes, I am a regular visitor. In fact, I would say that Nepal was probably my second home. And the reason for that is that my husband used to live in Nepal because his parents were working there during the 60s and 70s. So when Andy and I met, we decided that we would do lots more travel and trekking. And we met Basant, who was just setting up in those days, about 30 years ago. And we've been trekking with him ever since. So we have done quite a few trips with him, it's fair to say.
Well, that's wonderful. And I had met him because I actually inadvertently had rented an Airbnb that turned out that Purana Basant's wife had gone to the same small women's college in Virginia that I did. And I said, oh my gosh, somebody went to Sweetbriar? And anyway, so we connected there and we became friends. And then I found out, oh my gosh, he does these great tours as well. So 'cause they have this fabulous place right above the office, and that's where I stayed during my visit there. And we became fast friends and still keep up to this day. Six months later, we're chatting all the time on WhatsApp. A wonderful couple.
They are a wonderful couple, and they've set up this amazing business and can now offer beautiful accommodation as well, which has been so well appointed by Purana. She's got fantastic taste. Companies, all the trips that they offer. So, it's a perfect setup, really.
So cool. For folks that aren't familiar with Nepal, so it's in Asia. It's in the Himalayan mountains, so the highest mountains in the world. In fact, it's the home of Mount Everest. But we're going to Annapurna, so it's a different section of the Himalayan mountains. So what makes this part of Nepal so special, particularly with your experience in knowing Nepal as well as you do?
Yes, basically there are two main ranges, which are the Everest area and the Annapurna area. So the Annapurna area is slightly more to the west, and that's where this amazing massif, the Annapurna Massif, sits. The Annapurnas are made up of 5 mountains, I think. Annapurna 1, 2, 3, and 4, and Annapurna South. And they sort of form this incredible cirque of mountains. So you can go right up inside and be surrounded in what they call the throne room of the gods, with Machapuchare, which you might have heard of, which is called the Fishtail Mountain, which is very pretty. It looks like a fish's tail because it's got twin peaks. And Annapurnas are all around you. So I just love this area because it's so varied. And the thing about the Annapurna Sanctuary itself is that it's actually quite an easy trek and it's very accessible. It's one of those trips that you can easily do in 2.5 weeks if you're in a rush.
And one thing, so I did Everest Base Camp last fall, and as much as I enjoyed it, you're going up considerably higher on that one. And I decided if I ever did a higher altitude again, this would be about as high as I go, because I think you're only going it to like 14,000 feet, I believe, somewhere around
That's right.
that.
That's right. So you don't have so much altitude to contend with as you do Everest Base Camp. You're looking at like 17,500 feet. Annapurna, you're right around the 14,000. So actually there's less altitude to cope with. All of the treks that I've ever done, because Basant's really with the acclimatization process, which means that you don't rush when you're going up the mountain. You just take your time and you have rest days, and you advise to drink lots of water and so on. So you're always guaranteed of getting to the top. It's not a worry, this altitude thing, which I think is probably the main concern that people who go to Nepal have, because, they are the highest mountains in the world. So most people haven't been that high before.
And also you just feel better, because that was the one thing. I never felt sick on my ABC trek, but I felt unsettled because of the altitude. And I don't think at 14, because I've been at that several times, no issues whatsoever, particularly if I did, like you said, you acclimatize, which means you take a rest, or you hike up a little higher that day and then sleep low is how they'll do that. And so I don't think I'd have any problems doing this at all. And I've even heard, tell me what you think of this, that the Annapurna region is even prettier than the Everest region, beauty-wise, grandeur-wise of the mountains. Can you tell us what you think about that?
The geography there is stunning. I think one of the things which is lovely about the Annapurna area is the rhododendrons, because the soil in that part of Nepal is very acidic. You do get a lot of rhododendrons and azaleas growing. And in the spring, the whole hillside will be covered in this beautiful carpet of rhododendron trees, which grow incredibly. They're all sort of tangled and gnarled, but they're absolutely stunning. It looks like the hillside's completely in bloom. It's lovely, really lovely.
And what would you consider if somebody were to plan to try to catch the peak of the roadies? What month would you say that would be?
I would say that would be April. Yeah, April's probably the best time. April, possibly the beginning of May. It depends a bit on the weather, but
Of
yes,
course.
let's go April.
Yeah. So, so when I went to Bhutan in 2018, I could see those hills just covered in the rhododendrons. Like, oh, if we're just a little early, because we were, I believe, in March and they were just budding up. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to guess sometime either late April or into May for that. And again, it depends on is it early spring or late spring, etc. But so you think April would be like the best time?
I would say April would be the optimal time. The trekking period in Nepal, you can start in February. It'll be a bit colder then. March is getting pretty good and you're starting to get spring flowers. April, it gets nice and warm. May, you can potentially get the monsoon creeping in. And then in the autumn, they have an autumn season as well, which is probably from end of September through to December again. Obviously, the beginning of that, you could get the tail end of the monsoon, and at the end, you might get more snow and it'll be colder towards the Christmas holidays, for example. But all of this period it is possible to trek. And I think you can find other treks. You don't necessarily have to go high up into the hills to see the mountains. So it's very varied. And of course, there are also lots of beautiful other activities that you can do, like rafting and wildlife, and Nepal to me has everything.
So, and we will be talking about the trek itself, but there's so many interesting things about Nepal, and particularly this Annapurna, because you have Kathmandu, which is the crazy capital, and all the interesting things to see there. And then you go to Pokhara, which now you're almost in, it's not tropical, but it's pretty warm there, very lowland. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the things we'd see in Kathmandu and Pokhara, and then we'll get into more of the trekking itself?
Sure. Well, in Kathmandu itself, you have this, it's the Nawari capital of Nepal. So you have this very ancient kingdom, the center of Nepal, where you have a lot of these beautiful wooden pagoda type temples. There are various areas which were the old cities of the Kathmandu Valley. And these are made up from ancient wood, probably 500 or 600 years old at least, most of them. And you go into these squares, which are beautiful brick squares. People nowadays use them to wander around, to meet. The Nepalese will go there to pray. And it's a very evocative, ancient, historical center. And then if you go to Pokhara, Pokhara is very different. There are some temples in Pokhara, but it's based around this ancient lake, which is called Piwatal. And you look out to the mountains, which are very near to Pokhara. You can see Machapuchare, which is the Fishtail Mountain. So it's very different, more lowland, as you say, and a warmer climate down there. So those are the two varieties. And then further in the south, you've got Chitwan and Bardia national parks, which are where you can go and see the famous one-horned rhino, and they're doing a fantastic tiger program as well. The birds are fabulous, and they have a couple of well-known types of crocodile called the gharial crocodile and the mugger crocodile. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, it's lovely to go down there and do some trips in a dugout canoe as well.
Yeah, and Basanta Adventures can arrange all that for you, because they had arranged for me to go to Pokhara and to Chitwan during my visit, and just makes it very seamless. Very nice.
That's
And do you stay at the Fishtail Lodge when you go there?
I have stayed at the Fishtail, yes. In fact, that's one of the oldest, in fact, the first hotel in Pokhara, which was built probably in 1950, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. My husband's family used to stay there when they went out in the 70s. So, yes, it's a very picturesque, beautiful and historical hotel on Lakeside. In fact, it has its own little ferry that you have to travel across on.
Yes, I thought that was interesting. Yeah, so the guard kind of pulls you across in this basically rafty, bargey thing, 24 hours a day. He's on call. And then what I love too is that it's basically a nonprofit too. So whatever they do make goes, I believe, for cardiac care for folks that don't have the means to do so. So it's a win-win and beautiful. Just sitting on the dining area, you can see the Fishtail Mountain from there. It's stunning, and you're in this little oasis away from the city, yet not a very long walk to get to downtown. Very cool city. Enjoyed it very much.
That's right. And of course, all the sports you can get a little canoe onto the lake itself and spend a happy afternoon paddling around there.
And I believe Sharon went on a gondola of some kind as well. But yeah, so there's lots of fun activities to do from there. So now now you land in Kathmandu, now you get to Pokhara. They don't have the problems that getting into Lukla is, right? as far as flying?
No, it's certainly not as limited because it's a straight run, if you like, from Kathmandu to Pokhara. So they have a good airfield there, and it's not hindered by bad weather and visibility as the trip into Lukla is. So yeah, it's
And for
a
those
pretty
that don't
straight.
know what we're referring to go to the Everest Base Camp Trek, you fly into what's considered the most dangerous airport, this teeny little airport where the runway's at a slant. So when you're landing, you're going uphill so you don't hit the mountain. And when you're taking off, you're going downhill to get some speed. So I thought it was kind of exciting. But so you get to Pokhara, you probably adjust that day, and then now you start your trek. So how long is the trek? Can you just kind of give us an overview about how long you're hiking each day and like what a typical day might be like?
Yeah, so you always have a briefing at the beginning of your trek, which is great because that allays any of your worries, and they do a gear check to make sure you've got all the bits and bobs that you're going to need. On a trek, you don't have to carry your own stuff, which I think is very important because people think, oh, how on earth am I going to manage it all? Because Nepal has porters who are the most amazing, strong, faithful, hardworking people I've ever met in any country I've ever been to. And they will carry your kit bag, which has all your stuff for the trek itself. So your sleeping bag, your jacket, and your clothes. And they will carry a couple of those and they will go from stop to stop and accompany you on the whole trip. And by the end of it, they are absolutely your best friend and so entertaining and lovely. You have a trekking guide as well, and you have an assistant guide, and those guys will be with you the whole time to make sure that everything runs smoothly. It's all set up for you.
Very cool. And I will include on the webpage for this episode my packing list for Everest Base Camp, which I assume would be very similar for this. And you don't need to bring as much as you think you do. You have a limit for the weight, which is 12 kilograms for the porter, around 25 pounds. I didn't even need all that much. I tend to wear my stuff over and over again and just rinse it out and dry it. But anyway, I have all that information on the website for you. And they will also provide you with a waterproof duffel for the porter to carry. So you don't have to worry about that as well, which is helpful. So
That's absolutely right. So all you have to do is to carry your day sack, which has got your basics in for the day, an extra coat, some water, some snacks, your camera, just the things you're going to need on the trail to make sure that you are flexible, because obviously we're in the Himalayas, so you never quite know how the weather's going to go. But hopefully if you're trekking in the spring, it's going to be beautiful, lovely and warm during the day, and then in the evening it cools off, and often in the morning it's very cool as well. So you'll wear an extra coat, and then by you start walking, get nice and warm, and then you can pop that in your backpack. So you're self-contained for the day.
yeah, and I did learn not to be, it's not that I was lazy, it was just every effort and every single ounce I could take out of my day pack, because you don't realize, every little bit matters.
You
I
yes.
carried all 4 seasons because when it looked like it was going to be gorgeous, the mountain weather can change in an instant. And there was one day I regretted it, and I was like, nope, won't do that again because I was cold and I don't like being cold. Tell us, are the paths, is it a path? Are you on rock steps? Like I saw a lot of steps on the EBC. So what's the trail like?
So the trails have been there for many, many years. I mean, like 70, 80, 100 years, some of them, because that's how the locals get around. And these days, they're so conscious of making the paths suitable for trekkers. So you'll meet people along the way who are putting nice stone slabs and rocks to make the paths really accessible for people. If there's a steep bit, there'll be lovely steps going up, and there'll be dusty trails, and there'll also be nice little weaving, meandering trails going through woods and looking down onto the river. In the case of the Annapurna one, it's obviously going to be the Gandaki River. It's a very easy trail. On this trip there are some steps, the famous steps of Chomrong, which sort of a bit like the Hobbit. Have we got there yet? Very picturesque, and the paths will take you through villages where you stop intermittently. In the morning, you'll stop and have some tea, and lovely Nepali milk tea, which you have at a lodge. Then you'll stop for lunch, which you'll probably have dal bhat, which is the most delicious national dish, which consists of lentils and rice and some vegetables, and it's so nutritious and fresh and wholesome food. And then when you get to your little lodge in the evening, you'll settle in, unpack your bag and order some supper, and all sit around and talk about the lovely day that you've had.
I want to go into detail or drill down a little bit more on a couple things here, the food and the lodging. So on the Everest Base Camp Trek, they warned me or advised me not to eat meat after Namche Bazaar because the porters were carrying it. Is this the similar kind of a thing where there's no other access to refrigerated food? So it's as far as a porter can walk in a day with something that needs to be refrigerated? Or what advice would you give us as far as selecting what we're eating when? Or is there a concern there?
I would say it's no hardship to be vegetarian for the whole of the trek. You can get tuna fish, tinned tuna on the trail, which is obviously everything on the trail has been carried up by a porter. So any beer bottles you see, any bottled water that you see, any cans, any, dare I say, Pringles seems to be a favorite with some trekkers. Everything is carried up. So from a conscious point of view, it's probably good to have what they have, which is their staples. The protein staple was lentils and some rice, and dal bhat is fantastic. But the food that they make is astonishing. Loads of pasta dishes, pizza, lentils, rice, stir-fried rice, all of this. It really is very various and delicious. So you're not going to go hungry. But as far as keeping meat cold, occasionally, if you're invited to somebody's home, for example, they may kill the chicken for you, which is a great honor and should be enjoyed. And therefore, it's nice and fresh and everything. But it's kind of a luxury up there, really. So sticking to vegetarian, I would advise.
Okay. And then are you eating solely at the tea houses? And please describe what a tea house is and what tea house life is like.
So tea houses are beautiful lodges which are inhabited mainly during the summer, usually during the trekking season. So there might be 2 seasons. People will stay there during the summer, but in the winter, especially high up in places like Annapurna Base Camp, which we're talking about, they won't stay there much after December because the weather might get too rough up there and it's very hard to get supplies. So they'll close for a few months and then start again in the spring. So the lodges have lovely big dining rooms where you can all sit around at tables and you'll have your food in the evening. And then they have lovely twin rooms, basically. There are a few that have dormitories, but mainly you'll be staying in a twin room, which is very simple. Got a couple of little beds in there, enough room to put your backpack. And then there's normally a bathroom down the hall. Sometimes you have an ensuite as well. I would say nowadays it's more common to get an ensuite in your room, but bear in mind, if you're somewhere where the weather is closing in and it's freezing, then things like loos and taps don't often work. So it can get a little bit basic sometimes, but most of the time you have everything that you need. And as far as the washing the clothes, which you mentioned before, that's always a great thing. You can wash your clothes in the tap outside and then just dry it, pin your socks to your backpack during the day and they'll be dry for the next day. So it's great fun. It's a different and a fun way of having a holiday.
Definitely. I would like to remind people to, at least everywhere I was in Nepal, to always keep toilet paper with you, because even in a nice restaurant, it may not be available. So you don't want to be caught off guard should you need it. And also I brought, and tell me what you did there. I brought my own Sawyer squeeze to treat my own water rather than buying the bottled water, or I guess you could buy boiled water. I don't like putting hot water even in the BPA-free bottles. So that was my solution to water. How do you take care of your own water?
So the problem with the water in Nepal is that it has something called giardia in it, which are they're invisible microbes which give us bad tummies. The Nepalese are acclimatized to that already, so it doesn't affect them, but we can't drink the raw water in Nepal. So the only thing that puts paid to these giardia is iodine, in my opinion, and you can buy these little tablets in a small bottle which you put in 1 liter of water. So you're just constantly treating the water and you know that you're absolutely perfectly safe. You can drink water that's been boiled, so you've got to keep hydrated on trek. So you're going to have soup, tea, coffee, all these drinks add to your liquid intake. But when you're having water just to sip along the trail, make sure that it's treated.
For sure. I had Giardia. It is not pleasant. Not for Nepal. I did that on the Appalachian Trail, but not fun.
I was just going to mention about the bottles, that you're right. I would absolutely recommend treating the water yourself. You take a couple of empty bottles with you, like litre bottles, that you can treat the water. Because when you start to buy bottled water, they have a terrible problem with pollution and what to do with the plastic bottles. You know, when it's in Kathmandu, it's slightly different. I still wouldn't do it myself, but it's slightly different because they do have a sort of recycling system. It's not very good, but it's there. Whereas up in the mountains, you know, whatever goes up has to come down or it just gets discarded. And this is where we have a lot of problems with pollution in the river. And as you know, pollution on Everest, well documented, and in other villages with the dreaded plastic. So I would just say to people, please just treat the water and don't buy bottled water because it's not worth it. It's so destructive, and we can do it. We can drink water and treat it ourselves.
I agree wholeheartedly. Do they have a place like they did in Namche where you could actually pick up some of the trash to bring it back to Pokhara to help alleviate the trash problem?
I'm not sure. I mean, lots of trekkers do that anyway. They're really great. So they might go litter picking of a day when it's particularly bad, just fill a plastic bag and then get rid of that on their way back down and take that down into town. So yeah, I would always recommend trying to do a litter pick like that. And there are also lodges now which have started providing water that's been filtered. So they may charge you a little bit for that, but it's certainly much better for the planet for you to pay for a little bit of water that's already been treated. So that's an option now, which is becoming more popular as well.
And I had asked Kevin, who was my guide on my ABC, I said, who's doing the littering? And he thought it was mostly the porters. And when you see them carrying all the weight, you'll see them bringing up a stack of 4x4 posts or sheets and sheets of plywood. And if they rip off their snack and a little piece of paper falls off that they tore off to open it up, they're not going to want to bend over when they've got 80 or 100 pounds on their back because they may not be able to get back up. So I totally get it. But that was his opinion, that it wasn't necessarily the trekkers, it was the porters.
I'm afraid that is true in my experience. And as you say, they've probably got other things on their mind. They do like to munch on some dehydrated noodles or a little snack or something, and they just toss the paper away. So I would generally say that the tourists are pretty responsible, apart from this long-term problem with the water, which is very easily solvable. So yeah, it's just education as far as the staff are concerned. Certainly on treks that I've been on, we would always just try and make sure that the guys don't leave anything behind as they go off with their loads, and just explain to them that just pop it in the bin, please.
Right. Another thing I remember about my trek, and you're going along, let's see, what's the name of the river? The Modikola River, if I'm saying that correctly, often. I was crossing suspension bridges. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And are they scary, or do you feel safe? Or tell us about the bridges.
Well, it depends whether you get dizzy when you go across them, really. For people like me who I slightly suffer from vertigo, I just sort of hold the person in front of me's shoulder and whistle a happy tune and get across as fast as I can. But actually, most people find them wonderful and thrilling, and they are incredibly safe. A lot of them were put in by the Swiss and other NGOs who just did it to ease the mobility of people, children in particular, who may be scurrying off to school and don't have to go all the way down to the river and back up the other side. So they really have changed the landscape, but in a good way. A very famous one in Namche, and there are lots of very long suspension bridges throughout Nepal. But I'd say it was better than going on one of those a little bucket, shall we say, with a wire that goes across the river. Feels slightly more secure.
All the ones that I went across on my trek were like aluminum slats, and the sides were like chain link fence, and there was even welded bits of rebar across the slats to catch your boots so you wouldn't even slip. So I found them much more secure than I was anticipating because I saw some of the older photos in the day where they looked a little dicey. And they were also quite wide because the porters need to be able to carry the plywood. So they're at least 4 feet wide and a couple of inches because you'll see them using the same bridges. Like I said, you're sharing this trail with other trekkers, with the locals, with the porters, with all the livestock that are moving up and down, whether they're carrying goods or not, or it's their life. It's just not isolated trekkers, right? You're
That's
all
right.
it's one big cacophony of people and animals.
That's it. It's their highway. So yes, they're all people have to cross the river at that point. So it's very exciting. Obviously, if you've got yaks coming, you need to turn around and go back the other way. But that only happens in the Everest area. And there are lots of mules as well. You know, they use several different animals for carrying all the packs. So and if they've got to take gas canisters up to the higher ends of the trek as well, they'll use mules for that. There's always animals on the trail, which is very exciting.
Yes, I thought it was fascinating. And then so the people too, so in on the Everest side, you have the Sherpa people. Here you have the Gurung people, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Is there a differentiating thing about this particular group of people, or can you tell us about who the locals are?
In the Everest area, you do have the Sherpa people who are the mountain people, and then as you say, in the Annapurna area, you've got the Gurungs. Nepal has probably 150 ethnic groups, so there are lots and lots of different people, smaller tribes, all living together quite harmoniously. They have slightly different religious views, some of them, but it's a real hot pot of different cultures and different pastimes and different things that they do.
So you had mentioned that this particular trek is not as difficult. Are most of the climbs outside of that one set of stairs fairly gradual ascents? Talk about like the elevation change up and down throughout the day and the difficulties. Like how hard does somebody have to train to do this?
Okay, well, I would always suggest, and this is what I do before I go off on trek, just really try and up your cardio, because the fitter that you are, the more you're going to enjoy it, because however fit you are as well, you're still going to be affected by the altitude and you will feel a little shortness of breath. So combine that with this constant exercise that you're doing every day. The more you can do before you go, the better. And even if you're going up and down the stairs or doing a bit of running or something cardio, that's really, really going to help you. So the trekking day, you'd start off after breakfast and you probably do a couple of hours trekking in the morning, maybe 3 hours, and then you get somewhere for an early lunch spot. And then the afternoon, depending on your final destination for that day, could be another 2 or 3 hours. So, you're looking at 5 hours, maybe 6 hours. Sometimes there are longer days, and sometimes you might just walk in the morning in order to get some good acclimatization. So distance wise, it's a bit harder to judge because sometimes you may end up going down to the river and that'll take you an hour and a half, and then you've got to go up the other side to the village on the other side. As the crow flies, you haven't traveled very far, but you may have been walking for 4 hours. So it varies from day to day. But this trail, wonderful paths, great views, and finally coming up into MBC, an ABC, where you're going to really notice the altitude a bit. It's so exciting that you're just enjoying it, and the exhilaration of being that high up in the mountains is fantastic. So you just ignore your breathlessness and keep trudging on.
Very cool. So we were talking about the difficulty level, and so on a scale of 1 to 5, so Everest Base Camp, we put that at a 5. Where would this trek fall on that scale?
Yes, I'd say that was about a 3.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. 3 to 3.5. It's lower altitude. It's not quite so challenging. The paths are very good. There are bits and pieces, and depending on the weather, you can get snow. One of the things about the Annapurna Base Camp is that you have to go up through this very narrow gorge with mountains on either side, and sometimes if there is heavy snowfall, you might not be able to go through that pass, but most of the time it's absolutely fine. So it's a slow and gentle plod, and you're going to get there to this amazing amphitheater of mountains, the Annapurna Base Camp. So yeah, it's fantastic.
So what would happen if you get to that pass and it's impassable? What do you do?
Normally you wait for a day. There's usually somebody who cuts through, especially if there are people up there already. So they will come down and break trail, and then it's okay to go up there.
I see. That was one thing I've found very interesting because of the fact that the Lukla airport shuts down so much. They were just very chill when things had to be changed or dates changed. And so I guess they're used to sometimes having to modify the trek, and nobody seems disturbed. They do what they need to do, but it was very different than other cultures I go to. They'd be panicky, oh, we can't do this, or any thoughts of what I'm trying to get across here?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is Nepal is a phrase that you will hear quite a lot, whether it's because of the political situation or the amount of rain or because the flights aren't coming in. It's a mountain region, and especially nowadays when there may be effects of global warming, even the seasons have become slightly less reliable. So the fact that they will always give you their hospitality, they'll always try and make things work, and they will not put you in danger. If you have to wait, you have to wait. And I think as Westerners, that's something that we can learn a lot from them. The fact that they are very, stoic, and they will just sit and wait it out and do the right thing. Always just take them at their word. They know what's going to happen, and they will just organize things around it for you. And I think that's the nature of the trail as well. Sometimes part of a trail may not be accessible, so they'll make another plan and just make sure that everybody's safe, and they'll look after you. And there's always food and dancing.
There you go. There you go. And also, if folks are a little bit skittish about visiting Nepal, I happened to be there during the change last fall. And what I learned from that is, I heard time and time again, guests are like gods to them. So even if they're having their own internal strife of trying to figure out what to do, both sides, everybody's going to look after the guest because they're a guest to their country. So I was never going to have any issues whatsoever. And they're just so friendly and hospitable. And so I would feel totally comfortable going back at any time. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I agree. I think the Nepalese, of all the peoples that I have ever experienced, are probably the most hospitable, kind and generous. They will, even if they have nothing, they'll invite you into their home and give you soup or tea, and they'll talk to you, and they are the loveliest people, and they're so they're just fantastic and hard. Even though they experience hardship in their lives with the weather and crops and politics, it's always been up and down, the politics in Nepal. But at the moment, they've just had an election, and it's a very good result because the chap they've got in now really is planning to do a lot for employment of Nepalese themselves. The young people who coming into work at the moment, they're really trying to create more jobs for them now. So things are really looking up for Nepal, which is fantastic. The mountains will always be there, and we need to go and support them. Just go there and make use of the fantastic skills that they've got.
I totally agree. Okay, I want to talk about the travel and crowds, because I've heard that some of the treks, particularly during peak season, can get really, really busy. I happened to do my trek right at the tail end of monsoon, so I pretty much had the trail to myself because people didn't want to risk the rain and not getting the big views. Tell us your thoughts on over-tourism of the trek and how they should, or how they might consider the timing to avoid going during the busiest times, or go into that a little bit for us, if you would, please.
So I would say that in the spring, there are fewer people. That's probably a good time to go. Autumn, especially in the Everest region, can get very busy. And obviously the lodges are only as big as they are. Any good trekking company will book ahead and make sure that you've got accommodation, but even that's not always guaranteed. If you can go at either end of the peak season, then that's great. It's just one of those things. It's very hard for the Nepalese government to say, no, we can't take any more. It's not restricted. Machu Picchu or somewhere like that. So they'll just invite the trekkers and everybody will buy a permit, which the money goes towards, for example, the Annapurna Conservation Area Project, which is ACAP. So you'll have a trekking permit, which puts the money into that, which is great and is always nice to see the fruition of that when you can see path building and rubbish collection and money going into trails and so on. So that supports the income of the locality, if you like. But yeah, as far as overcrowding is concerned, I think Basant will definitely suggest the best time to go. And if you can also take a little bit longer than the actual number of days of the trek, then you can see a little bit more of Nepal and go to other places where there aren't so many people, like Chitwan, as we talked about, some of the other outlying towns outside Kathmandu. The valley itself, absolutely stunning. And go and look at the agriculture, meet some lovely people, farmers, people who are just living just not that far out of town, really. So it's also possible to go and walk around the Kathmandu Valley Rim, which is a great way of getting an idea of the geography of it. So there's a lot to do there, and it's quite easy to avoid the crowds, I would say.
And I think it's also great too that Basant and his company Basanta Adventures, because they're based there in Kathmandu, they know their country inside and out. They can arrange all sorts of other tours for you. And it doesn't have to be this or Everest Base Camp. They can arrange private tours. They can arrange a group tour. So I encourage you to poke around their website and check them out and communicate with them to tailor make your Great Nepal or Tibet adventure. It's very affordable compared to a lot of the countries that we visit on this podcast. So you can really have quite the experience for a very modest amount of money.
Absolutely. I mean, when you're eating in the restaurants in town, it's very reasonable. And when you're on trek, it's very reasonable, bearing in mind that everything that you eat on trail is grown in somebody's garden, either in Kathmandu or in the lodge garden. So it's ultra fresh and it's 0 air miles and worth every penny. So it's great value. I would say really good value, but money, yeah.
But speaking of money, as you get further up the trail, remember, it's been on somebody's back, whether an animal or a man's back, to get up there. So you will see the prices climb a little bit more the further somebody's had to carry that.
That's right. Although they do regulate the menus. So the Annapurna Conservation Project, or in the Khumbu area, the same thing. They have regulated menus. So each lodge has a list and everything's very clearly priced. So even though it may be more expensive than back down in Kathmandu itself, you know why, and you know how much you're paying when you're ordering, basically. So everything's very clear and honest.
Yes.
I think that's something about Nepal, is the honesty and the desire to help you and make you have a good time is just top of their list.
And was it also like my trek where they had a little notebook and you would write down the things that you ordered, whether it was the hot tea or the meal, or if you were buying the Wi-Fi that day? Is that how they keep track of it?
Yes, that's right. Yes. So when you sit down for every meal, you can write it in the order book and then tot it up at the end. It depends if you're all paying in a group or individually. But yes, everything is written down quite clearly. And the communication between you, the kitchen, the staff, it's pretty seamless. Even in a lodge, which may have 20, 30 people in it, for them to produce that amount of delicious meals, it always amazes me every time. But the quality is fantastic and they're so skilled and helpful and happy in their work. It's brilliant.
For sure. And your guide, of course, is an English speaking guide, so you're not going to have any communication issues.
That's true, yes. It's always nice to come away with a few words of Nepali as well. Namaste being the traditional greeting, which means we salute the gods in you, which is lovely. And you put your hands together in a sort of prayer position. But they will speak fantastic English and will sort out any issues that you have. There's always a briefing every evening to let you know what's coming up the next day, which is great. And they just keep you informed. And you'll learn so much about the staff and their families and how long they've been doing portering or guiding. So it's a very, very immersive thing to do because you're on the front line dealing with the actual Nepalis themselves, which is lovely.
Nice. So did you need to pay for your meals, or is that included with your tour, or do you get to ATMs? Or talk a little bit about cash.
So cash is king in Nepal, and it's worth getting money when you get there. You can't buy Nepalese rupees outside the country. So once you get into town, when you're in the office with Basant, and he'll give you a briefing and let you know where you can change some money. For us at the moment, the exchange rate is extremely competitive. So you're getting about 200 rupees for your pound, which is fantastic. And you go and get some money out from an ATM or from the money changer, and that will pay for your food on the trek, which is by far the simplest thing. Occasionally there's a fully inclusive package, and I think Basant might do some very nice trips where it's a bit more luxury and you can go and have all the food included, so you don't have to take that money. But otherwise you end up paying your bill at the morning of every lodge. When you leave in the morning, you just pay your bill for supper the previous night and your breakfast. So it's very simple, and it's all seems to work very well.
But you need to bring your cash for the entire trek, right? Because you won't run into ATMs along the way. Or talk about that.
Very occasionally, depending on which trek you're on, there may be places where you can get some money, but obviously it won't be at a very good rate. So yes, you work out at the beginning how much you're going to need for the trip, which will be your allowance per day, a bit of extra for snacks and things. And at the end, we always have a ceremony where we give the staff some tips as well. So you have to take some tip money with you, and it's usually a little party with beer and popcorn and definitely some Nepali dancing, and it's all great. And we say thank you so much because they've been fantastic for the whole trip. So that's all money that you need to allow for on the actual trek.
Terrific. Yeah. So I had originally, and tell me I might have done that wrong. So I had heard that they also like US dollars. So my original plan was to tip them in US dollars, but then since I ran out of the Nepalese money, I had gotten some more at the more expensive ATM rate further up. And I figured, well, I'll just get extra because I can always add that to the tip. So do they have a preference as whether they'd have local or pounds or dollars?
No, I'm sure they don't have a preference.
Okay. So that way, yeah, I was like, I know I can get rid of them because I didn't want to change it back. So I was like, I'll just go towards the tip.
Exactly. I'm sure they don't mind because they can change it in one of the bigger towns anyway when they go back down. So I think they don't mind. They really
Okay.
don't mind.
All right. Well, that's good to know. And so I also saw in the Annapurna region that the wildlife, you had a lot of birds there. Did you see much wildlife outside of the pack animals, or many animals besides the pack animals?
Yes, you do see a lot of wildlife, and there's been quite a few initiatives to encourage wildlife and to curtail private hunting and so on. So the national bird, the pheasant of Nepal, is called the danfei, which is a most amazing partridge, grouse-like bird, which is beautiful colors like a rainbow. I don't know if you've seen one of those, but you can see the danfei now much more regularly. And things like deer, Himalayan tahr, which are a kind of deer, musk deer are very prolific. That's a very small little deer with kind of little fangs at the front. And then lots of different birds, kingfishers, drone. What else can I think of? Himalayan grouse. So definitely, if you love birds, take a pair of binoculars. I would recommend that because and you can also buy a very lovely little book on birds or borrow one from the office to take that with you on the trek, so you can identify lots of the birds there. So yeah, really great for nature.
Very cool. So when you look back on this trek, what were some of your favorite memories or sights, or what sticks in your mind?
I think the fact that the river is rushing down from the Annapurna Cirque itself, all the snow melt coming down, the life water, and it's supplying water to all these villages all the way down to Pokhara. Nature, the beautiful lodges, which are really well kept in the Annapurna area. Everybody plants beautiful marigolds outside. They're so pretty and picturesque. The food is fabulous, the trek food, and the people there are just lovely. So it's probably my favorite trek of the whole of Nepal, I would say. And the mountains up at the top is just priceless.
No, I can't wait. No, I've decided I'm going to do it. It won't be next year, but I think the following year. So if anybody listening to this wants to join me, let me up. Hit me up at kit@activetraveladventures.com. I think I'll put together a group for us. I think it would be a blast.
That sounds amazing. I'm on.
Well,
Let me
there you
know.
go. Got the first slots going.
Wonderful. Even though I've done it before, I do it again.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and I'd love to meet you in person too. So how did you get into trekking to start with?
Well, it was because Andy's family lived in Nepal and he had that connection from when he was young. And we just started doing it because he'd already been there and said it's absolutely wonderful. I mean, we've been trekking throughout various revolutions and never had anything untoward happen to us. So, as I say, things happen in Nepal and it just keeps going. So, that's one of the contacts that we had at the beginning.
Cool. So is there anything that I should have asked you about this trek that I didn't, or Nepal or the trek that you want to make sure people know?
I would not hesitate to go to Nepal because the people are so lovely. The history is so fascinating and complex. It's a tiny country, but it's so physically and spiritually powerful. It's wedged between China and India. So, two of the largest countries in the world, and it still maintains its individuality, its religion and its beliefs, and the people are absolutely delightful. And Nepal has so many different facets. It's a little jewel, the jewel in the Himalaya.
Can you talk a little bit about just the assorted religions and temples and shrines of Nepal?
Yeah, so earlier described the ancient cities within the Kathmandu Valley. So you've got Durbar Square, which is probably the most famous, and it has all these amazing temples in it, wooden temples with lots of different layers to them, like pagodas. And Bhaktapur is also another area that you should visit, which again is steeped in history and religion. And you just see people going about their everyday lives, worshipping and giving offerings and lighting butter lamps. You have Swayambhunath, which is the famous monkey temple, which is an enormous big white stupa up on the hill, and Bodhanath, which is also another fantastic place to go, going by, worshipping, doing the kora, which is when you walk around the temple, and lots of ladies in Tibetan costume there doing their pujas. So it's the whole of the valley is vibrant, and they're practicing their religion on a daily basis still. It's delightful that it hasn't sort of dissipated into modern life, really.
And what I found interesting too, and I don't know if this is just because of the festival, but there would be offerings even on the sidewalk around a tree. There would be like a little thing, and you'd see them crushing marigolds, as I recall, or crushing flowers as offerings. Or can you tell me what all that was, or do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, well, there are little altars everywhere. A tree may become an altar and be festooned in prayer flags. They will light little butter lamps to attract the gods, as well as ringing bells. And it's absolutely steeped in everyday life of every Nepali, this want to worship, to give thanks, to pray. So everywhere you go, you will see it, and it's part of daily life. And during festivals, whether it's Tihar, where they light lots of little lights and put them all around their houses, or water festival where they throw water, or Holi, which is where they put lovely coloured paint all over each other. There are constant festivals. It's amazing they get any work done, to be honest.
I was just about to say that because now that I'm friends with Purana and Basant, and now we're Facebook friends, like they're having another, they just had a festival, they just had a holiday.
Yes, yes. And when you like them, you see they're combining Newari and Tibetan culture. So you've got Tibetan festivals, which may be involving lots of food and beautiful cakes and all kinds of things, or cutting your hair or something like that, and the Newari side. So, you're doubling up. It's amazing. And it's interesting how lots of different religions share the same festival date, whether it's Holi in India or Songkran in Thailand, for example. These are water and color festivals. So they're all following a theme. And Nepal is probably leading in that respect.
Yeah, I saw that. And I saw too. I was like, well, was this Buddhist or Hindu? I was like, oh, well, it's kind of both. So
Yes, it is. There's a lot of mixing up there.
right, very cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a delight to get to know you. I hope to get you back on. Now, have you gone to Tibet with Basanta Adventures?
Yes, I have.
Ooh, we'll have to get you back on to talk about that hopefully sometime.
Okie dokie, that would be really nice. Yes, Tibet, absolutely amazing. Another place to go. And Basant is the agent for Tibet in Nepal, and he knows absolutely everything about it. And it's so special to be able to go there with him and his guides because they know so much about it.
Well, I think, as I recall, I think his family's from Tibet, correct?
That's right. Yes, his mother's from Tibet. Yeah.
Very nice. Well, it's
Yeah.
been a wonderful experience, and like I said, I'm going to go in 2028. I'm committing to that right now.
Wonderful.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to hearing about Tibet in a future episode.
Thank you, Kit. Very nice to talk to you. Namaste.
Namaste. I hope you've enjoyed this overview of Nepal and trekking the Annapurna Base Camp. If you are interested in going on a private or group tour of Nepal, Tibet, or Bhutan, be sure to check out Basanta Adventures and email me for the current discount code at kit@activetraveladventures.com. And be sure to visit my website to see photos and to get more information. And to get even more information, don't forget that I do a travel planner for each and every adventure episode. In fact, every episode. There'll be a downloadable, printer-friendly sheet that's got active links to help you plan your trips. And you'll get my once-a-month newsletter. Note, I said once a month. That's all you get, usually the first Thursday of the month. And I don't sell your name. You can unsubscribe at any time, but it's a good way for us to have a two-way conversation. I get to know you a little better. If you write me and tell me what you're up to, I'll write you right back. I really appreciate you listening. Until next time, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on!